Okay, moving on to the next team in the ACC, and this is going to be the team that I have coming in fifth place in the ACC, and that would be Leonard Hamilton and his Florida State Seminoles. And looking at this Florida State team, I feel like it's kind of became a trend with all Leonard Hamilton teams of the past that they get a lot of roster turnover and they bring in some talent, either freshmen or JUCO guys. This current Florida State team has a lot of both of those two kind of talents in particular. But at the same time, this Florida State team does have a lot of roster turnover, but that's nothing Leonard Hamilton isn't really used to because he's done with it a lot in the past. And the crazy thing is, I feel like people are going to forget just how much Florida State lost from last year's team until either the NBA draft happens or until they see Florida State on the floor and see actually all the guys they lost. Because last year, Florida State was probably the best team in the ACC. I would make that argument. And even they are the ACC tournament champions. Sarcastically, I say that, of course, if you remember, right after Florida State gets on the floor and starts warming up, it's announced that the ACC tournament has been canceled, and all of a sudden you see the most awkward-looking trophy celebration that I've ever seen. That was just some crazy, crazy stuff. The Florida State players didn't know what to do. But anyways, Florida State, I am confidently saying, was the best team in the ACC last year. The problem is, looking at this year's squad, they lose a couple big-time players, including Devin Vassell, a kid that's going to be a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. Trent Forrest, a kid that was their starting point guard throughout his college career. He was a phenomenal, consistent player. And Pat Williams, a one-and-done kid that decided to go pro. He was super dynamic, super athletic, and I'm pretty sure that he will be a lottery pick come NBA draft night. But Florida State does bring in some elite talent, starting off with Scotty Barnes, who, along with Jonathan Isaac, he barely beat him out, is going to be the highest-rated recruit in the history of Florida State basketball. And once again, that just shows just how good of a job Leonard Hamilton has done with this program since he has become the head coach of Florida State. I feel like when he first took this job, you would have never expected Florida State to be recruiting at this high of a level all this time later. So Leonard Hamilton deserves a lot of credit for that. And Sardar Calhoun, one of the country's best JUCO prospects. And the thing I like about the way Scotty Barnes fits with this Florida State team is that he's Leonard Hamilton's dream player. He's athletic, and he thrives in Hamilton's system because he'll be long, bouncy, and can guard basically 4 or 5 different positions, and he could really slash to the rim. He immediately becomes the future lottery pick in Tallahassee, and though his offensive game is a little raw, he's great on defense, and Sardar Calhoun is kind of like the opposite. Barnes' weaknesses will play to Calhoun's strengths. Florida State also does bring back some returning talent to this year's squad. You start off with MJ Walker. He's a senior. He's a former McDonald's All-American. And I feel like if you ask most Florida State fans, they would tell you that so far during his Florida State career, it has been a little disappointing. But at the same time, I do believe that with no more Forrest and no more Vassell, I do believe MJ Walker now is going to have his first real opportunity since he's been on the Florida State team to really take the Bulls by the horn, lead this team. And I feel like last year, if he could average 10 points a game, this year in a bigger role, he could average at least 15, and I feel like if Florida State is going to be at their best, they're going to need MJ Walker to really improve, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They also will bring back Raekwon Gray, Malik Osborne, just depth guys that have plenty of experience playing in this Florida State system, along with Anthony Polite, and this is kind of what makes Florida State so good. The depth, the size, the athleticism, and last year, Florida State forced the highest rate of isolation shots in the country, nearly 10% of their opponent's possessions, and ranked ninth nationally in defensive turnover rate, the highest such ranking in the Leonard Hamilton era. And when you think about it, right, how many good teams, especially on the defensive side of the ball, has Leonard Hamilton had since he's been the head coach of Florida State? And last year's team was very good, and I feel like this team has the chance to be that good, but they're going to need guys to step up and replace Devin Vassell. on both sides of the ball, by the way, offensive and defensive, along with the other two guys, Forrest and Williams. I feel like Raekwon Evans is going to be a guy that will have a little bit more pressure on him this year. His play will be a massive swing factor in the Florida State season, and I feel like the reason why I'm a little bit lower than Florida State as opposed to everyone else is because of guys like that, right? Because of guys like MJ Walker, because of guys like Raekwon Evans and Raekwon Gray. I don't necessarily know if I'm going to be able to trust them right off the bat to really just be a big-time contributor right away. I'm curious to see what exactly Leonard Hamilton does in terms of his rotation because he has so many guys that could make a possible impact. The other kid I forgot to mention is Tanner Ngam, the kid from Ryerson, Canada, 7'1" senior. I'm curious to see if he could take that Chris Kamaji role, maybe start the game, play 10 minutes to start, and maybe just guard and lock down the other team's opposing big men, rebound to give your team a nice rebounding advantage, and then go from there. They also have Balsa Koprivica, the 7'1" sophomore, another former top 100 recruit. I believe he could be another guy that if he could find his way onto the floor, could make a significant impact for this Florida State team as well. I believe Florida State right now, with Leonard Hamilton as their head coach, is basically set as a program, right? I feel like it's known that every year Florida State is going to be at least in the mix in the ACC, and I feel like when you look at the current state of the Florida State football program, most Florida State fans would be okay with their basketball program doing this good considering what their football program has been as of late. So Florida State, Leonard Hamilton, they have the program definitely up and rising, and I feel like they really have created their identity over the last couple of years. They always get big-time athletes that should be able to lock down every one of the other team's best players that you're facing. The offensive question mark means it won't be another season in pursuit of 30 wins and an ACC title. But I feel like if you're a Florida State fan, you just have to realize just how much your team lost that is going to be playing in the NBA. Vassell and Pat Williams are both going to be lottery picks. When was the last time Florida State had two lottery picks in the same year? I'm going to guess it doesn't really happen that often. And then you also lose Trent Forrest, a guy that was leading your program to multiple NCAA tournaments over the last couple of years. I do believe that Florida State is really going to have to rely on other guys to step up to replace some of that production. And the good thing is they have plenty of guys that could do it. Right now, if I'm Leonard Hamilton, my starting five would be Scotty Barnes at the 1. He's going to be their 6'9" point guard, kind of like their Ben Simmons type. I'm curious to see what exactly the Florida State offense looks like going through him. I would go Sardar Calhoun at the 2, MJ Walker at the 3, Raekwon Gray at the 4, and Malik Osborne at the 5. I do believe that gives you a lineup of 5 guys that could really shoot. Gray and Osborne and Barnes gives you good length on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm just curious to see, is that lineup going to be able to score enough? We know Sardar Calhoun could really shoot the ball. We know that Raekwon Gray could really rebound and is productive. Osborne has experience playing in this system, and I do believe in Leonard Hamilton. I do believe he's a top 15-ish coach, maybe even better in college basketball, and I do believe in Florida State, and he does deserve a lot of credit for what he's done with this program. So I have Florida State finishing in 5th.